see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
And it is a wonderful world, and you can have a wonderful life if you increase the capacity of love in your heart. You've got everything you need to love more. In fact, you're going to be surprised when you find out what the source of that love is. It has a lot to do with your brokenness, my friend. Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Andy Q. We get together every week at this time to talk about your life. You don't have to be bitter. Life can be better. We know that life is no bed of roses, no pleasure cruise. There are some bumps and bruises along the way, but you can participate in making your life better because you have God on your side and He wants your life to be better. We are joined in studio with Christopher Storm and Norman, and we have Lou, Garrick, Jr. right there in studio as well, doing the engineering work. Biblical Beth is here with us. Hello,
Hi.
Biblical Beth. Thank you for being a holdover from the last show that we did. Get Me Grounded. And we have Mr. Bill Hatch joining us for this particular show. And seems like every show that we've done for the past 5 years.
Almost.
But we've been on the air now for 8 years, and but who's counting? So this is what we do, and we want your life to be better. If we can help and pray for you, dialogue with you, I promise to go on the Facebook pages. That's
Your Wonderful Life.
and we'll dialogue that way. If you'd rather do email, you can go Andy@PastorAndyQ.com, and we'll chat.
Yep.
What we do.
All kinds of wonderful ways to reach out.
Love to pray. I had somebody dropping by the office once, found me out, just said, "Hey, I gotta talk something about the radio." And after I figured out he wasn't a stalker, I was relaxed and okay, good. But,
Wonderful.
listen, let me ask you, what do you suppose Jesus' greatest work on earth was when he was here? Any ideas?
I would say teaching us to love, right?
Well,
Ooh,
that's good.
that's a good one.
That's powerful.
Well, personally, I like when he was fighting the Pharisees and because they were not so fair, you see.
Yes, that's a good one. That's true.
People forget about Jesus the warrior.
We're going to talk about a little bit of that warrior action and the works that he's done. Now, we've been looking at the 7th chapter of Luke. And he did some good works in that chapter. He healed sickness. He restored life, raised somebody from the dead. That's big. But those weren't permanent works of healing. The permanent work of healing is forgiveness. He forgave someone of their sins. And that person, I think, has a lot in common with us, as does the other person in the story. Let's just kind of talk about it. Jesus goes into the home of the Pharisee. This is someone who, they figured they were pretty holy just by the do's and don'ts. What they did right, what they didn't do wrong. Just like, quote, us good Christians that get full of ourselves, especially on Sunday morning when we have all our act together, or at least we think we do.
Yeah, I don't get full of myself until after the buffet. Oh, that's
True holiness is not a religion. True holiness is from a relationship with the holy God through Jesus Christ.
That's right.
We got religion on one hand, we got relationship. Well, the Pharisees were into the religion, and they were more interested in their rules and worldly power.
how to wash your hands and things.
All those things. And stuff like love, mercy, forgiveness, not so much.
What does your God require of you?
Yeah, well, they weren't into that.
They forgot that one.
Now, there was a woman in the town. Now, the text says she lived a sinful life, but the implication is that this woman was a prostitute. And she goes to this dinner. She crashes the party and wets Jesus' feet with her tears. She starts crying on him, and she wipes his feet with her hair and kisses them, pours a perfumed lotion on them. Should have anointed his head, if you want to be technical. I don't know if it's because he was reclining at the table, and if you're ever laid down and try to eat a meal, your feet are sticking out pretty far from your head. Mm-hmm. Well, either that or she didn't feel worthy.
Right.
Like John the Baptizer said, the one who comes after me is not worthy I'm not worthy to untie his sandals. Mm-hmm. I think that's more what's in the mark.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into during Holy Week when we celebrate Jesus washing the disciples' feet. The example of this is the lowest of the low kind of a thing, and I'm God, so I'm doing this. You go lower, and all. She was going as low as you could go in those days.
Yeah, especially those stinky, dirty feet. This is the main mode of transportation, was walking. And if you've ever gone camping and worn your flip-flops, your feet are going to get dirty.
Yeah, because the disciples didn't get their Honda until after Pentecost.
Where they all
went of one accord.
There you go. Yeah. I go ahead, set up the punchline if you're gonna give me
every now and again.
Listen, the Pharisee is thinking, gosh, this Jesus, if he knew, if this guy were a real prophet, he'd know what kind of disgusting, despicable woman was washing his feet. That she's a sinner. Grumble, 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 grumble. Or the Bible uses a word, murmur, which is not a very positive term. But it's an exercise I engage in from time to time, murmur, murmur, murmur. Especially if you're married, you're kind of murmuring sometimes even about the one you love.
Some people go to see a doctor when they have a murmur.
Yeah, somebody should see a spiritual doctor if they've got a murmur
of the mouth.
Of the mouth, yeah. Well, the Pharisee was clueless.
Yeah.
True story. This was a news story out of the AP, out of Associated Press, Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee Highway Patrolman stops this car that was a total wreck, had 3 flat tires, still moving down the highway with 3 flat tires, and every window had been broken out, and the roof was collapsed, showing that the car had been
in a rollover.
Yes, Mr. Bill's an auto expert. He is. Well, he's got a degree in auto management.
I've wrenched on cars too. I have a degree in auto technology as well. Don't shortchange me.
Well, but even a lot of mechanics don't have the 4-year degree, even though all that computer stuff. So you've got that. Anyway,
amazing.
Car had been wrecked, still going down the highway.
Wow.
When the police officer stopped it, the woman was so surprised that the car had been wrecked. It's like she's looking around. She didn't even realize she'd been into an accident until she went to roll down the window that was already broken out to talk to the officer. So something must have happened.
Yikes.
Guess what the question was that the police asked.
What was that?
Have you had anything to drink, ma'am?
That's it. And she said, of course, well, 2, maybe 3 beers on the outside.
Everybody on Cops has had 2 or 3.
Yeah. Here's a woman who was so drunk she hadn't realized that she wrecked her car, hadn't realized she'd been into the accident. That Pharisee was so clueless. He didn't realize that he was the one with the deep sin, the judgment in his heart. And yet he was looking at the sins of this other woman, and he was saying, too, how vile she was compared to how good and holy he was. Well, Jesus is going to set her straight. Remember, she comes in, and she crashes the party. Jesus is there reclining at the table. He's an invited guest. She's wiping his feet with the tears and her hair. With her tears, her hair, and she pours this lotion on his feet. All the things that the Pharisee, or at least the Pharisee's servant, should have done. Well, Jesus doesn't get into that yet. He says, supposing that 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender, one owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. 1 denarius was equal to a day's wages. Okay. So one person owes 50, one person owes 500. He says, neither one can pay you back, so which one would love the lender more?
Right.
The Pharisee, Simon, says, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. Jesus says, you have judged correctly, grasshopper. Well, he didn't. Different religion, I guess. Well, so, there's this idea of debt. And let's just talk about that for just a moment before we go on with the story. Mm-hmm. All good gifts come from God.
Yes.
But anybody else take the good gifts we get even on a daily basis for freedom? I mean, we drive here in freedom, and we forget there's this great sacrifice that has caused us to be able to move about in our own.
You know, there was something I was able to do openly this morning because of the freedoms we have. I went to church.
Yes,
Right.
there you go.
Yeah.
You know, we can thank the shed blood of the martyrs who continue to be present in tough situations and even go to their death for keeping our religion going. And we can thank God for the soldiers and the airmen and all
That last full measure of devotion.
that last full measure of devotion. That's a great way to put it. That's
I can't take credit for that one.
Is that your dad?
No, that's Lincoln.
Oh, Lincoln.
Yeah,
Founding fathers.
Yeah.
little after.
Well,
that.
I know your dad. His dad is a chaplain for the VA. Yeah. So, listen, we love our servicemen and women. Boy, that would be great if we could find a way. Now that we're into podcasting and we're doing this on YouTube, but if we can find a way to really connect with our service people,
That
that'd
would
be
be wonderful.
really
Yes.
cool. Look, we owe the people a debt, and we owe those that, in the name of Christ, were martyred. And how can we show love to Christ in our current context? Maybe we, in this, as we get a little extra money, we on occasion send it to worthy causes such as the
Pathway Ministries.
human trafficking. Yeah,
Yes, that too.
Human trafficking. We will write a check for a wonderful place down in Mexico. We don't talk about it much. For one thing, I can't talk about it much without crying.
Right.
Honest to goodness. The other place, and we're getting a trip together in October, Rainbow Acres.
Oh yeah.
The developmentally disabled adults that are there are taken such good care of.
You ever want to get a different perspective on life? You go and look at what they're doing with their lives.
There's so many ways that we can express God's love. And we're going to get to that and talk about what we can do more of in just a visceral way when we come back. This is Your Wonderful Life on Angels Radio, AM 830 KLAA. Wait for us 2 minutes.
Angels Radio.
AM 830.
Pastor Andy Q back with you. The show is called Your Wonderful Life. If we can pray for you, help you in any way that we can, we'd love to do so. One way is to
Head on over to Facebook and find us as Your Wonderful Life, where you can reach out to us either privately or publicly, and you can also chat with people, both other listeners, both around the corner and around the world.
And we have Rocco, who's running around the studio like a head with his chicken cut off, and he's filming, and he's doing that so that we can actually be on YouTube. We've been putting audio on YouTube, but now we've got audio and video. That's why they say
exciting?
I'm ready for my
AV.
close-up, Mr. DeMille.
Yeah. So they've been in here with makeup and all of that stuff. So, all right, maybe not.
No.
It's probably pretty obvious that
Coming soon.
no makeup.
Yeah.
Listen, but the important thing is we want to get the word out there, and we're going to be podcasting this as well. And it's all volunteer. Everybody who's here is a volunteer. So,
Love it.
except for Lou back there running the board, he's not a volunteer. He's an employee of AM 830, and
Oh, I thought he was impressed labor.
we're not paying him enough. Listen, we were talking about a woman who was a party crasher, a sinner, a prostitute who came to this party and had a strange, awkward reaction to Jesus at this party. At least it was awkward to the host of the party, a Pharisee, a guy who was a real religious guy, not necessarily a good thing, people, who was the host of this party, host of the owner of the house. This woman's in there making a scene, and she is wiping Jesus's feet with her tears and her hair. Well, the Pharisees all bummed out about that, and Jesus sets him straight. He says to the Pharisees, he says this, and we're looking at Luke 7:44. Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. He says, do you see this woman? See, the Pharisee, the bad guy, accused Jesus of not seeing the woman. He doesn't even notice this woman. If Jesus knew that the sinner was there, you would not let her do what she's doing. Jesus turns it around and says, if you knew that this woman was so repentant, she's sorry for what she did, and she's devoted, she's loving. Point is, Jesus sees people differently than people see people. God sees on the inside, man sees on the outside, God sees us on the inside. The whole point of the water was, that was the least bit of hospitality that one was expected to do when you went into the house of somebody, was to rinse those dirty feet.
Not just that, but I mean, maybe I'm remembering some of their traditions a little bit wrong, but weren't the Pharisees all about washing stuff?
Oh, yes.
I mean, it almost sounds like they weren't actually in this guy, Simon the Pharisee's house. It's like, wouldn't there be a mikveh like right there at the entrance?
Well, there might be, and there might be well, yes, but whenever there was a visiting rabbi, they would have maybe had it in their courtyard. So who knows why it was overlooked? But I think there's maybe a motive, and that guy didn't care about Jesus, and in fact was hostile to him. But we can't read that into the text. But the point is what Jesus is saying. You didn't bother to do it, but she's done it for me.
And then some.
And then some. And in fact, he goes on, he says, you didn't give me a kiss, but this woman, and that's kind of like the greeting kiss, mwah, mwah, to just welcome somebody.
Yes.
The woman did not stop kissing Jesus from the time Jesus entered. So instead of a kiss on the cheek, she's kissing his feet, his dirty, disgusting feet. She's loving it.
Yeah, lovely.
He goes on to say, Jesus says, you didn't put oil on my head, but she's poured perfume on my feet. Again, missed the mark. You didn't say I was an honored guest by treating me with honor, and that's what the oil on the head would have done. You have an honored position in my home. She didn't even get to his head. She's anointing his feet.
She can't even stand in his presence.
Yeah. So listen, Jesus says, your sins are forgiven. And he says, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So here's a question for you. With whom do you identify? Do you like that? I'm being very precise in my English.
With whom?
Who do you identify with? Is the way it
it'd still be whom.
Sounds good. But
It'd still be whom.
yeah.
Yeah.
With whom do you identify? Who do you identify with?
I like to think that I identify more with the prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure I have more than my fair share of Pharisee moments.
Yeah, that's very honest. I mean, Beth, I think on Sunday morning, we all go to church here in this room, and we think we've got our act together. And if we see one of those sinners walking in, sometimes, we're judging them and wanting to. But put yourself in the shoes of that prostitute, especially in a small town, or just think of your small network, maybe just even a little smaller than your Facebook friends, just a group of people, your household, family, friends, the people that know you at church. Right. And just think of all those people looking down on you because for whatever reason in life, you've become a prostitute. And, I think of that, and I think of all I've done, and never got paid, but I was a pretty loose guy before coming to faith in Christ. I'm glad a lot of people didn't know about that. I probably wouldn't have been proud even back then, even though, I didn't have the heightened sense of right and wrong. But if the entire community held me up in shame and I couldn't even be friends with people, I couldn't even be part of a family anymore, I couldn't be part of my church community, I'd be looking for somebody like Jesus.
Right.
Because he was preaching a way to get out of that circle of shame.
Right.
And the way out of that shame was to forgive, which the Pharisees and the religious people of the day weren't doing. They weren't forgiving people of their sins. They couldn't. They wouldn't. Jesus had authority to forgive sin. And that's what he did. He simply forgave this woman's sin. And her response was to love much. You have forgiven me much. I'm going to love you much. And guys, when I think of all that God's done for me, when I think of what he's doing for me with my family, my work, we get to do this on the radio.
Yeah.
We're here at Angel Stadium. We're live, and we get to talk about Jesus. He gives me, as unqualified as I am, I've got the advanced degree from Talbot and all that, but I feel like I'm just starting my education. And by the way, that was clear back in 95. Yet somehow he allows me to talk, even when I grumble. And I did some of that earlier this week. I had to go see somebody, having to drive. I slapped myself. Man, I got to go drive and counsel a pastor who needed some counseling. What a privilege to do that.
Sure.
I lost sleep, and I don't care I grumble sometimes when the phone rings. It rang at 4 a.m. because sometimes I get these stupid calls. I'll just say, like, oh, I shouldn't have called, but or whatever. Or somebody will hang up, and whatever it is.
Were you
well,
sleeping?
I snapped out of it as soon as I heard what the issue was. It was huge, a huge issue. Wow. And I just thought, oh, Lord, you're using me. What a great privilege to be able to use me. And I constantly think of where I was, and he's allowing me to do this. You ever sing in the shower?
Maybe a little.
I do, man.
Yeah.
I mean, show tunes, everything. But I was thinking of that song from Sister Act, that I Love Him song. The little Peggy March. March was 15 years old when she did this hit, Idolizing a Man, as only a 15-year-old love-struck person could do. But I was thinking of that song because Sister Act, I love him, I love him, and I was thinking of those words, and I was changing them to, I love you, and where he goes, I'll follow, I will follow him, follow him wherever he may go. There isn't an ocean too deep, right? A mountain too high.
Beautiful.
It can't keep me away, and I just started weeping. There it is. All right, yeah, good. So let's not take God's investment for granted. Let's not be like the conceited Pharisees who think we've got it all together, because we don't.
No.
Pastors, man, if you want to win your congregation over, reveal how broken you are to your congregation, because we're broken, man.
Sure,
we are
be
broken.
humble.
And if we don't think we're broken, then, man, you're not driving on the freeway, or you're not in marriage. You're not living real life somehow, because we blow it. But let's be more like the sinful woman who was repentant and recognize that we're sinners saved by the grace of God. Oh, Father, let's love you so much that we're willing to wash your feet with our tears.
Amen.
Friends, if we can help you in any way, boy, we want to do that. Any last word? You guys can have the last word if you want. Otherwise,
Love.
yeah, boy, that's a good, simple last word. And a companion of that love is forgive. We love, we forgive, and those two go hand in hand. And if you think you can't forgive somebody, just think about what you've done and how you've been forgiven. Now, some of you, I know I hear from you, you need to forgive from a safe distance because you got some knuckleheaded man, who's beating on you, or some of you have been wounded by your parents. I get that. But you can find some way, some safe way of loving. And if we can help in any way,
Head on over to Facebook at Your Wonderful Life, and we'll be there.
and we'll continue this dialogue after the show. That is all the time we have for right now. I want to thank Beth and Bill and the guys in the engineering booth, Chris and Rocco and Lou. Thank you, guys. Stay tuned for Tammy Trujillo for Community Cares. Tammy cares, the Angels Baseball Organization cares, and we care. Good night and God bless.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful